All right.
Yeah,
So, very good evening to all the respected doctors, delegates, and faculty members. To begin with the seventh session of our day, I would invite our moderator, Dr. Twinkle Kumar Shah, to initiate the session. Over to you, Doctor.
thank you. Thanks to All India Ophthalmic Society and Dr. Partha Vishwas to inviting us for the instruction course. The course is mainly not the target of only a 2020, but it is to achieve it 100%. Try to achieve 100% in all the patients who are undergoing the cataract surgery. And more newer IOL power formulas are coming up with the newer diagnostic tools and artificial intelligence. So our ICs focus on the recent advances in IOL power calculations and formulas and toric calculations. Course will also include the newer IOL power formulae like Barrett, CAN, retracing formulas, Olson's, Tada Super formula, EVO formulas, newer biometry tools. Everything will be included, and we will also go for the different tricky situations like very long eye, very short eye, post-vitrectomized eyes, post-refractive surgery eyes, pediatric and keratoconus eyes. So let's start. Let's begin with our first talk, Dr. Harshul Tak. There is no need to introduce Dr. Harshul. He is a very well-known for the all the podiums all over the country. He is from Jaipur. Over to you, Harshul.
Thank you so much, Dr. Twinkle, for having me in your course. So, I'll be talking about advances in the optical biometer. Can I see the timer, please? Okay, fine. So, biometry, we all know, is the practice of applying mathematics to biology. And broadly, biometry systems are ultrasound based and optical biometry based. So A-scan ultrasound, which we have been using for decades, they use a sound wave frequency of 10 megahertz. It has accuracy of 0.1 millimeter. But there are various limitations of ultrasound A-scan. We all know that ultrasound, it does not depend on patient fixation. It just measures the anatomic axial length of the eye from the anterior pole to the posterior pole, and not the optical axial length along the visual axis. The second problem which is inherent to ultrasound biometry is that it measures just till the internal limiting membrane, whereas optical biometry give us a true optical axial length along visual axis of the eye, and it measures from anterior corneal vertex to the photoreceptors on the back of the retina, which is required. So it was in 1990 that the first optical biometer was introduced. That was the IOLMaster 500, and in 2000 another biometer, Lenstar 900, was introduced. So these both biometers, they were basically based on the principle of Michelson interferometry, in which a light source, it passes through a beam splitter and gets divided in like two rays, and these returning waves, they recombine, and the constructive interference is detected by the photodetector, and we come to know that how much path these waves have traveled. So this is the basic principle of the Michelson interferometer which was utilized. So this was the IOLMaster 500. It uses 780 nanometer multimode luminescent diode, whereas the Lenstar, it uses a 820 nanometer superluminescent diode. Now, basically they both differ in two aspects. If we compare the PCI and the OLCR, is that the light source is different. In PCI, a multimodal luminescent diode is used, which creates a discrete light spectrum, whereas in the 820 nanometer SLD based biometers, it creates a continuous light spectrum. Now, if we see the measurement process in MMLD based devices like PCI, every wave it creates a secondary maxima for every structure it passes through, whereas in the SLD driven biometer, they do not show these secondary maxima, and therefore it allows easy peak detection throughout the entire eye. So that's why it's permit display of full A scan from cornea to anterior chamber depth to lens, and the of course overall axial length. And secondly, they both interferometer differ in their optical setup. PCI is a basically dual beam setup, whereas OLCR is based on a proprietary rotating glass cube system. And the limitation of IOL Master was that to measure the anterior chamber depth and corneal thickness, it was using slit lamp imagery. It was not measuring it with the laser. So this was overcome by the OLCR, which measured central this corneal thickness, ACD, lens thickness, and axial length. Because the newer generation formulas, they do require these parameters, and the K readings in lens tower calculated by two circles at 1.65 and 2.3 millimeters, and 32 reference points were used. So after that, AL scan was also introduced, which is also based on partial coherence interferometry. Aladdin again is based on optical low coherence interferometry. Now the limitations with these biometers were like we overcame the problem of axial length accuracy with these biometers, and we came to know exact lens thickness, anterior chamber depth, and everything. But the penetration in dense cataracts, in subcapsular cataracts, in polar cataracts was very low with these biometers, and they only measure anterior cornea. So in 2015 came the breakthrough technology, that is the swept source OCT based IOL Master 700. So this swept source biometry, it provides, if you see, it provides a full length OCT image of the eye showing anatomic details in a longitudinal cut. So if we see image like this, if we see depiction of this image, it allows identification of unusual features also in the like lens tilt and decentration, which can contribute to suboptimal outcomes. Then OCT image also allows to check us for the foveal fixation. If this fixation is not good, we can again take the measurements. So this swept source OCT IOL Master 700, it has scanning rate of 2000 scan per second, and it uses a wavelength of 1055 nanometer, and this wavelength vary from 1035 to 1095, and it provides a two-dimensional OCT scan, as I said. It uses a 950 nanometer light to obtain telecentric keratometry in 3 zones. Let's see. So it makes 2000 scan per second in 6 meridian: 0 degree, 30 degree, 60, 90, 120, and 150. So here we can check the foveal pit. It means patient has good fixation, and if we don't see any foveal pit, it means patient has poor fixation. So it is this telecentric keratometry is distance independent. So there are 18 spot there in the 3 zones, one at 1.5, 2.5, and 3.5 millimeters. So another advantage is that it has all the formulas, Haigis, Holladay 2, and apart from that, so this is, it also gives us the total keratometry. So basically, telecentric keratometry gives us the keratometry from anterior corneal surface, and the swept source OCT gives us the posterior corneal surface keratometry, and combining it, it gives the total keratometry. And it has now incorporated Barrett TK Universal 2 formula, Barrett TK Toric, Barrett TrueK with TK, apart from Haigis L and Haigis T and Haigis TK formulas. So we can utilize these. Another advantage is that it gives us the Chang varying chord. We can easily directly see the, which is here in this case is 0.8 millimeter, which is equivalent to angle kappa, that is the angle between visual axis and pupillary axis. So these are the advantages of the swept source OCT. Then we also have another swept source based technology, that is OA 2000 from Tomy. It uses scanning rate of 1250 scans per second and uses wavelength of 1060 nanometer. It uses Placido disc using the 9 rings, each having 256 points, And we can obtain K values at different diameter at 2, 2.5 or 3 millimeter. Then we have Argos. Argos is also based on swept source OCT. It also uses 3000 A scans per second at wavelength of 1060 nanometers. So to conclude, nowadays we have most advanced optical biometers available with us, which gives us repeatable and reproducible measurements in different ocular parameters, and they are more effective at obtaining biometric measurement in eyes with dense cataracts, and they also provide certain good accuracy in our power calculation, especially with the newer generation formula which we use. So thank you very much, Dr. Twinkle, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Arshul, for a very wonderful talk and the insight in depth for the optical biometry. Now we are going for our next talk.
One thing I found very interesting is that the IOL Master 700 measures only 18 points compared to quite a number of points measured by, say, Lenstar or other biometers. The main difference, I think, what I discussed with some is that it repeats these 18 points repeatedly. As compared to the other biometers which measure more points but only a single reading or so is taken. So they believe that although they are measuring only 18 points compared to the other biometers which measure many more points, but because they are doing it in these zones repeatedly, it is likely to give a much more accurate keratometry reading.
Yes, sir. Very good. So now we are going for the next talk. It is a newer generation. Next generation higher power calculations formula and its implication. Now, in 2000, there was a good visual outcome was our surgical goal, and over the period of time, the next decade was the good refractive outcome. And over the period of time, because of the invention like a very good optical biometry and the keratometry measurements, and the refinement in the surgical processes also and the equipments also, the excellent refractive outcome is our goal. So as Dr. Harshul has told us about the how precise optical biometry and how the very good excellent we are getting it, and all the other equipments where we are getting a very good precise keratometry, a total corneal power from the various machines we can get from anterior surface, posterior surface, and the calculation by the Gaussian optic or the ray tracing technology, and we are getting the very good total corneal power. So the source of error or the magnitude which was present before, where the excellent and keratometry reading has been gone much down, and the another remaining part is the effectiveness position is considering as a major source of error nowadays. And to get rid of that, so many versions formulas like a Gaussian optics formulas from the third generation formula like Mullade 1, SRKT, or for Q, which we are using the two variables, the increasing the over the period of time, the more and more variable, like he has introduced the entire chamber depth, or the Barrett has introduced the lens thickness and the white to white measurement, and the Hollade has introduced the age factor and the pre-existing reflection part. So all these formulas increasing the variables to have a better and better calculation of effectiveness position. And this is the regularly we are using these slides in so many years. All these formula from third generation onwards, they are very good for the normal eyes, but when we are going for the short eyes or long eyes, they are not working very well. And the newer formulas, other than the versions formula like the ray tracing technology or the artificial intelligence, has definitely a more role in this kind of formulas. And another important thing is the anterior segment anatomy. When it is a normal, the older generation formulas are working very well, but when the anterior segment is not so good as compared to the other structure of the eye, then we need other formulas like this. So nowadays the predictors has been changed over the period of time, and so many other formulas are coming up, and they all are using the more and more predictors or the predictors. Like majority of them are using the axial length, keratometry, and anti-chamber depth. But the lens thickness is now, all the newer formulas are coming up with increasing in the consideration of the lens thickness. And further, people are now also considering the corneal sphericity part and the corneal posterior-anterior ratio. So many formulas are there in the 2021. Besides the third generation formula of Opperque, Holladay, and Higgs and SRKT, we have a middle of the decade was this Barrett Universal and Olson. The newer formulas from 2019 onwards, we have Hill RBF, EVO, CAN formulas, Panacea, Paul DGS, T2 formulas. All these formulas are coming, and we are very much confused which formula to use and when to use which formula. And all these are easily accessible, free of charge on these different websites. Very few are chargeable. So accessibility is also there, which was a question before. So now, which formula to be considered? At present in 2021, all over the globe, across the globe, the 5 top formulas are the Barrett Universal 2, CAN formula, EVO formula, Hill RBF calculator, and Olson's are commonly used at present. But most important part over this is, without regular optimization of their performance, no one is superior than the traditional formulas. So you have to constantly go on optimization your results. Now we go each and every detail of these individual formulas, like Barrett suite. Barrett suite is consists of the 3 components. One is the Barrett Universal 2, Barrett Toric, and post-refractive surgery IOL Barrett 2K. This is incorporated with the IOL Master 700. And it is a new generation formula, which is a theoretical model formula. It also considers the anti-chamber depth, axial, and then keratometry in the consideration. And the most important part is a thick lens formula. So whatever the IOL model, whether you are using a regular model of the biconvex, and if you are using for the high meniscus lenses like in high myopia, it gives a different lens constant. So the same way, Barrett Toric formulas is also taking in account of the posterior surface of the cornea, and now he has incorporated both the things, actual measurement of PCA and also based on the nomogram. Now this is the way Barrett gives the results in our IOL Master 700, and there are 2 constant. We have to understand these 2 constant. That's why I have kept this slide. Now Barrett has 2 constant. One is the LF value and one is the DF value. LF value is the Barrett formula IOL constant, like what the SRK TA constant which we are using it. But DF is a constant which is when the lens is transit from the biconvex to meniscus lens, which I had told you before. And majority of the equipment where the Barrett is incorporated with it, it has a default value. But when you are using a Barrett formula, or when you are using the lenses which are not, you are using the equipment where the Barrett is not incorporated, and if you are using the meniscus lenses, then you have to go for this DF value manually. So you don't go for the error for this. So Barrett is easily available on the APCRS website. It has 5 more features. Barrett 2K formula, which is meant for the post-refractive surgery IOL power calculation. Barrett Toric calculator is also there. Barrett Universal 2 formula for the conventional cataract surgery. Barrett treatment formula is meant for the post-cataract surgery refractive surfaces management. And Barrett 2K Toric calculator, which is specifically meant when the patient has undergone the refractive surgery and you are planning to put a toric IOL in such patients. Now another calculator, the formula is the Hill RBF calculator. Version 2 is a very widely now used. It has artificial intelligence machine learning process. Here the Dr. Hill has done this data interpolation and pattern recognition by artificial intelligence of a few patients who have been undergone the cataract surgery with alcohol lenses with the Lenstar measurement. But over the period of time, for the widening of the scope of this formula, more and more data he has gathered. And now his data set has been incorporating the high to extreme high myopia and high hypermetropia. It has been incorporated. So now Hill RBF 2.0 version is better for the extremes of the eye, and you should use the Hill RBF 2.0. Hill RBF 3.0, they have recently introduced one paper in the last JCRS, but we are still waiting about the newer version of Hill RBF 3.0. And this is the way the presentation comes on the screen when you are putting it. But now they here, rather than only the lens star, he has incorporated the further devices which you are taking the optical biometry. Only the optical biometry Hill IBF calculator works. So for that, you have to keep this in mind. Another formula is the Ladder super formula, where the Ladder super formula in artificial intelligence. It has a very important part is the evolving formula. All the formulas which we are at present is the Vergen's formula or the ray tracing formula. There is a fixed equation. This equation, you put the data of the axial length or keratometry or the optical biometry or the axial length. Then they will give you output of your IOL power. So you cannot change it by your self or your results. While artificial intelligence is a data set limited, where the LRBF or Clarke formula, where already the data set has already fed up and they had made artificial intelligence to work it up. But the LSF means the Ladder super formula, which is a formula which is evolving in such a way that whatever the dynamic system automatically adjusts by the formula. So data all over from the world, which is in real time, and it has been upgraded by itself. So this is the future of the IOL power calculations, that immediately you can code for the updated for your results. And this is the way it is available online, and it gives a presentation on the graphic report. And it's very easy and convenient to understand it also. Another one thing is the Ladder super formula has introduced a newer version of 1.0b, and that includes the device refractive index factor. So device refractive index factor is a factor where the different devices are measuring the refractive index differently, and that has been incorporated now by this formula. So any inter-instrument variability of the corneal index has been put off. Now another important part in the Ladder super formula is the upgradation of the optical biometers by self-calibration. So whatever the results by putting your input data and the deep learning IOL calculation, you are getting the power result. And once you select the lens, do your implantation, and the water ray for the wavefront analyzer, that data has to be submitted in the optical biometry. So the results, now the newer optical biometers are coming up in such a way that the Ladder super formula will keep updating by itself for the upgradation. Another one is a Panacea one. Panacea is a system, one of the calculators. But what is the only calculator of the toric and IOL power calculation? It has so many other features. So actually, everybody should download it on your desktop screen. So it will help you in your OPD for the refractive surgery or keratoconus and everything. As usual, the other biometric data he is taking, like optical biometry, axial length, chamber depth, lens thickness. He is considering the age factor. But another important part is the topographic data. He is taking care of the sphericity of the cornea and the posterior-anterior ratio of the cornea. That has been taken care by this Panacea calculator. And also it gives the presentation in different IOLs. What will be the present biphasic curve for the distance, intermediate, near vision for every individual lens? Suppose it's a bifocal or a trifocal or extended IOL, all the commonly available lenses all over the world. According to the patient's requirement of the distance dominance or near dominance, you can select it from this formula. Another good feature for Panacea calculator is it is considering a capsular back tilt factor. So in our next lecture, we are coming up that how the capsular back tilt factor has to be considered in the toric calculator. And this is the first toric calculator which has incorporated the capsular back tilt factor. Now the ray tracing technology for the IOL power calculation formula commonly used are the Oculix and the Olsen formulas. All our third generation formulas are the thin lens based formulas where the cornea considered as a single plane, IOL has been considered a single plane, and we are finding the effective lens position. At that time, the lack of the supercomputers, we were not able to find out every part of the cornea for the reflection point of view. So now, because of our better understanding and newer equipments, all this small map data, elevation database can be incorporated, imported to the Pentacam. Data has been incorporated to the Zimex ray tracing software. This is a software which has an optical engineering software. It's designed in such a way that it works in such a way that all the rays which are passing through the cornea and pupil and gives the point spread function, it retrospectively gives us the exact corneal power. What is the corneal power of even whether it is a normal cornea or abnormal cornea. So they perform better for the effective lens position calculation than the other thin lens based formulas. They are purely based on the optics, so they account well in the regular, irregular corneas. Even they consider the corneal sphericity. They also consider the IOL parameters, whether the anterior curvature and the posterior curvature of the IOL and the spherical aberrations of the IOL has been also taken care by the ray tracing technology. So this is a future where you can customize your lens according to the requirement. And it is very useful in the complex cornea, where the Vergennes formula, all Vergennes formula are not giving the proper K reading, and you are getting the error in its effective lens position. So Olson come with another one concept is the C constant phenomena. C constant, which has a new concept for the ray tracing assisted intraocular lens power calculation, where the C constant depends on the crystallized lens anatomy, where your IOL will be sit, where the middle plane of the IOL will be sit in your capsular bag postoperatively, and that is the retrospectively studied, and the C constant has been immersed out. Another good formula which is coming up and widely used, not in our India but widely used now, is the emmetropia verifying optical formula. It is based on the theory of the emmetropization and generation of the emmetropia factor in each eye. And this is also a very good part, is that it is a thick lens formula. So this is the EVO formula calculator. Now they are incorporated with the newer biometers like Argos biometer. They are also considering the lens thickness or central corneal thickness is also considered in the calculations, and they are taking the total 2K power, total corneal power in calculations. Very good part in this EVO is the toric formula. This is the only toric formula which has a very thick lens modeling formula for the different types of the toric lenses. And this is a theoretical posterior corneal estimation prediction. So it is not a measured one, it has a theoretical PCA predictions. And there is another important part is the dynamically interconnected prediction of the IOL power and toricity by the anterior toric, bitoric lenses or the posterior toric lenses. So this formula gives the option of which kind of toric lenses you are incorporating. So that gives us a more precise reading about the toric power calculations. Now the CAN formula, now all international forum, the CAN formula is now giving the same weightage as the Barrett formulas. It is also based, is a thick lens based formula. But another part is not only the theoretical optics, it incorporates both the regressions and the artificial intelligence component both. And one variable which is commonly used in the CAN formula is the gender variable, which is not there with any other formulae. And now it is considered that it gives the accuracy extremes of the axial length. This is the CAN formula screenshot, and you have to feed up all this data. Now, another formula is the all VGS calculator. This calculator, these three gentlemen has introduced this calculator. It is also based on artificial intelligence and optic based. But the very good part of this calculator is it can adjust its prediction using the postoperative data of the contralateral eye if it is available. So any refractive surprise or whatever the fallacies which you received in the first eye, that can be corrected by this calculator in the other eye. And it also works very well now. The few more details are coming up that it works very well in the corneal refractive surgery patients. T2 formula, it is a newer version of the SRK-T formula. It gives nearly 10% improvement in prediction accuracy. It is available freely, and you can download it it can be downloaded by version 1.3 freely on the desktop. So this is the way I downloaded on my desktop to use the T2 formula. For the normal light, it gives a little bit better results than the used. Now you have so many new formulas: Barrett, CAN formula, Hill-RBA formula, EVO formula, ray tracing formulas. Now, how to incorporate these in so many formula in the practice? Now, whenever you have a patient of the other than the normal range, like a high hyperopia or high myopia, put this calculate in all these formulas and compare the results. That will give you how to do further work. Suppose this is a high myopic patient where the XL length is 24.99. All these neurogeneration formulas are giving nearly equal results. But this is another case where the hyperopic patients, where the results are variable. The Barrett gives the 30.5 while the Hill RBF gives the 29.50. Now, how to overcome this part also? Let's discuss. This is the case where the XL length is 27.48. Now, when we go for the calculations, the Barrett and SRKT gives it gives the 11.5 reading, nearly for all the patients. When you consider the hematopia, it gives the range between the minus 0.22 to plus 0.25. But when you go for the 12 diopter power, it goes for the minus 0.54 to minus 0.07. So when I had opted for the 12 power, then it's gone near to the plano. So it's better to go for the little bit myopic side by the comparison of the different formulas. This is another example of the extreme myopia, where the XL length is 34.61. And when you go for the Barrett universal formula or the Hill formula or Ken formula, they works very well, and they are giving the minus 4 power with nearly minus 0.34 to minus 0.78. But when you go for the third generation formulas, it gives a very erroneous results. But when, as considering the long eye, when you go for the von Pohl adjustment, with the first constant adjustment from the latest ULIP data, the newer ULIP for the high myopia, and that gives the nearly same results, even for the third generation formulas. I think this extreme high myopia will be taken care by the Dr. Sonu. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Doctor. If there are any questions, we can take it at the end and we can go to the next speaker.
So our next speaker is Dr. Sonu. Dr. Sonu is not there. So we
yes, sir. Sonu is there, sir.
I'm there. Hi.
Hi, Sonu. Yeah.
Hi.
So Dr. Sonu will now take our power calculations in the abnormal situations, very long or short eyes or the post-Victor Price eyes.
So am I on? So I'm presenting now, Twinkle?
Yeah, you're presenting now.
So at the outset, I'd like to thank Dr. Twinkle Shah for making me part of this course. And I think year after year, he's been presenting so wonderfully in all these AIOS programs. And his course has really been one of the most rewarded series now. So I'm really sorry for my commitments in other places. So I'll talk on, just a second. Yeah. So special cases, long eyes, short eyes, and post-vitrectomized eyes. Twinkle, is my screen visible and am I audible? Twinkle?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you are audible.
Visible or not? Okay. So we all know that the measurements in cases of IL power calculation basically boil down onto biometry and the keratometry readings, be it a topographer or maybe any of the corneal measuring devices, an ordinary keratometer. Sources of errors in IL power calculation. Of these years, we've been thinking that the axial length, maybe the keratometry readings, and maybe the others, maybe the ocular surface, are the major causes where there is an error in IL power calculation. But believe me, it's the effective lens position which is the major attributor to all errors in IL power calculation. So it basically boils down to the formulas where you need an ELP to be calculated accurately. Then comes the role of the axial length, the keratometry readings, and the other sources of errors in IL power calculation. So optical biometry, we all know, is very accurate. It's no longer a significant source of error. The axial length by an ultrasound gives an average of plus minus 0.20, whereas by the laser interferometry, we can have an error of plus minus 0.02 millimeters. Now, if you see here the extreme bar on the right side with a partial coherence interferometry, you see a straight bar which is standing right on the zero, whether it's a myopic or a hyperopic patient, whether it's a abnormal axial length. So you get an accurate axial length calculation. Compare vis-a-vis the immersion A scan, you see there could be a fumble on the -1 or +1 side, and more so with an applanation A scan where there is falsely short axial length. There is, because of the variable conic compressions, microabrasions, high operator dependency. So gone are those days of an applanation. In other days with an partial coherence interferometry or maybe an immersion A scan. Keratometry, we all know, stands next to the IL pharma calculation, and very important is taking two keratometry readings maybe sometime apart, and be sure to identify the post-LASIK patients, which I hope will be discussed or maybe will be discussed. So the biometry in the IL PAR calculation, because small biometric errors can induce high post-operative refractive error. In cases of, that's why you prefer an optical biometer over an ultrasound. If you see here, the accuracy with an applanation is close to ±0.24 as against optical, which is almost bang on target. And the ELP, as I have mentioned, is almost 35 to 40% a source of error. And the axial length attributes to almost 17% to 36%. And this is what is a publication in the JCRS 2002 by the Olsen et al. So the classification of the IL PAR calculation formulas, we all know the Vergennes formulas, they differ in the way the ELP is calculated. You can have the historical or the refraction based, the regression, the Vergennes formulas with 2 variables, 3 variables, 5 variables, or the 7 variables, and the artificial intelligence, which is now new to the industry with the Clark neural network, the Hill RBF, and the ray tracing, the Oculix and the Ficortex Olsen methods. Now, when you talk about the short and the long eyes, the various formulas, so boil down into, for the short and the long eyes, maybe the formulas that you read, the Holiday one, the Hoffer-Q, which are very specific for short, and Esargeti, Hagees, Holiday, Olsen, Barrett 2, and the Hill RBF, maybe for the long eyes. Now, what happens in short eyes? The key for accurate IL PAR calculation in short eyes is the accurate measurements and adequate IL PAR calculation formulas. And yes, even after all this, we all know there is a big defect in the IL manufacturing standards where you have an almost variable of ±1 diopters for IOL power as more than 30 diopters. So that means even if you calculate an IL PAR close to maybe 35.5, but the industry yet has to offer you maybe a 35 or a 36 diopters, because the way they sort out the lenses, still it's a deviation of ±1 diopters. So the axial length, so in shorter eyes, basically an axial length and the ELP are the two major errors. So errors in axial length, AXL measurements have a very high impact, and an accurate production of ELP is very important in these short eyes. So if you consider an error caused by 1 millimeter of a compression of an eye, an average eye would have an error of 2.5 diopters, and this may be exaggerated in short eyes to the tune of 3.75 diopters. Now, this is where in shorter eyes, the power calculation error boils in. And in the long eyes, it may be as low as 1.75 diopters. Now, when you have an error in the ACD, I think my slide is, I'll just take a minute. Let me here. So an error caused by an, I'll just take a minute. So when you have an error which is caused by an anterior chamber depth mismeasurement of 0.25 millimeters. In cases of long eye, maybe eyes more than 30 millimeters, you have an error of 0.1, and this error can be increased to almost 0.5 diopters in cases of shorter eyes. So basically, an accuracy of axial length and an ELP is the two crux when you are dealing with the short eyes, and these are two major sources of errors in IL PAR calculation. So the short eyes, if you have an IL master, or you have a lens star. For the lens star, we basically depend on the Olsen formula or the Barrett, Olsen OLCR, or the Hagees or the Holiday one. But with an IL master, I think Barrett's Universal 2 formula is one great choice. You can have Hagees and Holiday one. So in my practice, I would take a multi-formular approach where I would take 4 formulas and then get an average of all the formulas. But I would trust Barrett's Universal 2. So this is a nice paper where there has been a meta-analysis of an accuracy of intraocular lens power calculation formula in short eyes, Chinese paper by Dr. Wang et al. And this basically concluded that the overall incidence from the studies confirmed the superiority of the Hagees in cases of short eyes over the Hoffer-Q, SRKT, and the SRK2 in predicting IL power in short eyes. Another beautiful paper by Robert McLaren, biometry and formula accuracy with intraocular lenses in extreme hyperopia, They again said this is the largest published series to date of biometric predictions for cataract surgery, and they confirmed the Haigis formula to be the most accurate. A consistent difference between the open loop. This is one very important point I want to highlight whenever we are dealing with short eyes. The lenses may be an open loop and a plate haptic lenses. There is always a difference. That means the haptic design always has an influence on the effective lens position, specifically when we are dealing with very small eyes. So this is one very important factor to choose the right type of lens when you're implanting in very short eyes. Now, when you're high myopia or maybe an eyes with high axial length, it is basically this again a paper from Elvin Chang, which says there is an improved predictive results with the Barrett Universal 2. So I think Barrett Universal 2 still holds true for extreme of the axial lens, high axial lens, and still you can have Haigis, SRK2, Hollade 2, and the Olsen formulas. So if you see, this is a beautiful pictorial depiction. On the extreme left, if you see those bars, this is the Barrett, the Olsen, and the Haigis. Now, if you see, the red is the extreme, the high axial lens or the high myopes. Blue is for short axial lens, and the green is for range between 22 to 25. So if you see closely, the bars are very minimal. That means the prediction errors is very, very less when you are talking for Barrett, Olsen, and the Haigis. So I think these three formulas hold very strong when you're dealing with the extreme of the axial lens, maybe the short, long, and even in the normal eyes. And if you see on the extreme right, these are the rest of the formulas where there is a high degree of error when you're talking of high axial lens. So Barrett, Olsen, and Haigis are the three formulas when you're dealing with the extreme of the lens. Again, if you see here, the central red dotted line depicts the normal axial length, maybe between 22 to 24, 25 on the extreme right. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, carry on.
Hello?
Hello, yeah,
Am
carry
I
on.
audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Sonu, you are audible.
Okay. So on the extreme right is the Twinkle, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You are audible.
Thank you.
Continue.
Okay, thank you. On the extreme right, you see an axial length between 25 to 30, and on the extreme left is less than 22. So if you see, the Barrett and the Olsen formula have straight, they are depicted by the red line. So they stand true for all the variability in the axial length. So that means whether it's a short eye, long eye, or maybe a normal eye, these are the universal formulas which can be taken into consideration. Just a quick word that I would share when you're calculating IOL calculation in the phakic IOLs. Now we have a lot of patients where we have done ICL implantation and you need to calculate out the IOL power. So I think I just wanted to touch up the last slide. And whenever you have an ICL or an Artisel or a Sachet or a Vivante inside the eye, basically the axial length is shorter than the real. That means when you calculate, it is shorter calculated than the real, and hence there is more power which is required, and there is always a post-operative refractive error of lens up into a myopic refractive error. As compared to if you have a silicone material inside the eye, the axial length calculated is slightly longer than the real, and hence the less power which is required, and you end up into a hyperopic power shift. So I would just like to thank here and thank again Twinkle Shah for making me a part of this course, and I would really apologize for late entering into the course. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sonu, for very good insight about the extreme of the eyes, very short eyes and very long eyes. Now I invite Dr. Tejas Shah for his talk. He's talking us regarding the how to be a master on IOL power calculation in abnormal corneas. And he will also include how to deal with the post-refractive corneas.
Good evening, one and all. Yeah, sorry for that mix-up. Good evening once again. A lot of formulas and a lot of deliberations already going on, and I'm going to talk to you about something which we do every day, and we are responsible for this kind of a situation. Well, what is it? An abnormal cornea. And I'm going to limit myself to an abnormal cornea, which is post refractive surgeries and keratoconus, right? The cornea is the poor structure which is bent, bruised, and whatever is done to that cornea, burnt also. And ultimately, all these patients are the younger ones who come back to us for their cataract surgeries. And that is why we need to be very, very cocksure about what we give them, because all these patients have already tested a life without spectacle. And so we need to give them a proper IOL power calculation so that they can still continue living a life without glasses if possible. So post-refractive surgery patients, as you all know, we constitute PRK and LASIK as well as RK, corneal scar and dystrophy, corneal degeneration, that is the keratoconus, and post-keratoplasty. Though I'm going to limit myself to the corneal refractive surgeries and the keratoconus, not the keratoplasty. So the biggest challenge is the IOL power calculation. This slide you all know, Dr. Twinkle used it to explain to us the ELP and how the older generation formulas were calculated, taking into consideration that the cornea and IOL are assumed as a single plane. And that's why this has to change. This cannot hold true in an irregular cornea, which has been already bent and bruised. Why? A conventional keratometry, it measures the anterior corneal curvature only. There is a fixed ratio between anterior and posterior corneal curvature, and it assumes that this stays like that for life. The keratometric index of 1.3375 to calculate corneal power, well, this is also one number which is going to change, and most importantly, it does not take into account the corneal thickness, especially in the case of a LASIK or a procedure in which we have removed the stroma. The corneal optics, they change significantly after the refractive surgery. We all know that. Sorry. Let's take example of a LASIK and an RK. As you can see in LASIK, there is always a flattening of the, in a myopic LASIK, there is always a flattening of the central cornea. And there is a decrease in the thickness. These are the two very important factors which alter the biomechanics as well as the shape of the cornea. Against that, in an RK, there is no loss of tissue, but there is a change in the curvature of the central cornea. We have to remember that in RK, the change in the central cornea is restricted to about 2.2 millimeters of the center. In LASIK, it could be more depending on the optical zone, but the more flattening is there in the middle, in the central 3 to 4 millimeters, which is maximum, especially when the Gaussian beam lasers were used with the prolate profiles. This is not so accentuated. So the problems in the conventional IOL power calculations will be the abnormal Gulstrand ratio, which I explained, the effective corneal area, and the wrong ELP estimation. All this leads to a very erroneous IOL power calculation and a dissatisfied patient. So we need to evaluate the true corneal power, correct? And we also need to ascertain that the refractive index, the corneal refractive index, has to be now changed to 1.3315. How to measure both the corneal surfaces? Well, there are three big groups. The Purkinje-Sanson images, which is a Schering, Dunn, and Royston, were the authors who brought the Cassini to no longer used. Then came the slit lamp or the Scheimpflug principle, where Van der Heide and the Doubleman were the people who brought this camera. This has been used in the Pentacam. Most successful was Pentacam to begin with. Then Galilei and now Sirius have also jumped into it. And then there is the OCT scanning principle, which was brought by Izzat and Marcos. And the Zeiss IOL Master 700, the Heidelberg Anterion, the Optoview, the Tomy, and the Cassia are the brands of machines which are used to us, available to us. Let's talk about IOL Master 700. In fact, I believe Dr. Harshul talked about this. The biggest advantage of IOL Master 700 is that the swept source OCT allows us to measure not only the anterior but the posterior, because it passes through it. It actually makes a torus fit, and the mathematics and the formula inside it converts it into a true K or the TK, total keratometry. The second important parameter is the Holaday equivalent keratometry report. Well, this usually comes out of a Pentacam, and this is also a very, very important parameter which gives us a good effective corneal power so that our IOL calculation can be good. So how to tackle the issue in post-refractive surgery? Well, we have the two possibilities. We use the measured, that is the total TK, or the estimated correction factors which are there in the effective corneal power in Pentacam. The true corneal power in new formulae is used in like Barrett True K formula and the Holaday, while now there are certain smart engineers who have brought something wherein we do not have to measure the cornea. Well, they do not rely on the corneal power like Aramberry, the Double K, the Haggis, the Presnor, the Olsen, and the Oculix. So we have these two big groups where we can actually either measure the proper corneal power or we can just bypass the corneal power. So when we use a measured or an estimated true K power, that is we are considering the cornea as an important structure, we can go to the conventional online ASCRS post corneal refractive surgery calculator. This is the most easy and the one which has been used the longest. The now Barrett True K formula allows us to give a very good IOL power calculation, to get a very good IOL power calculation, wherein we use the online or the TK incorporate IOL Master 700 measurements. And we have the Holaday 2 post CRS formulae for equivalent keratometry of the Pentacam, or now the Pentacam HR or the Oculix is used. This is the IOL power calculation website. And there, as you can see, we have a lot of options. We can use the Samas, we can use the Haggis, we can use the Galilei, and this allows us to actually compare and come to a conclusion on a single page. This is the Barrett 2K formula, online formulae, and this also can be very effectively used, and probably this has become the most used formula for at least the irregular corneas. So coming to another group, which are the formulas which are not relying on keratometry at all. The Olsen formula is the most widely used, and the C constant. The C constant defines the IOL position in terms of the crystalline lens anatomy. So it absolutely bypasses the K reading. This becomes very important when we do not have the previous reports, we do not have the previous measurements. This also becomes very important, and we actually bypass the entire cornea. Let's talk about RK. In the LASIK or the refractive surgeries where an ablation was done, the situation was different. While what is the difference in the post-RK patients? There is no tissue removed. The RK flattens both anterior and posterior corneal surfaces in a small central optical zone, which is significantly smaller than the standard keratometry zone, like I said, about 2 mm. And here the entire cornea moves forward. So the advantage is, and so there is no change in the anterior posterior curvature relationship. The post-RK measuring K use several devices. So what do you do? What would you do? Use several devices to measure K's. Use the flattest K as average for K for calculations. You can use an average of 1, 2, and 3 millimeters and 4 millimeters value of topographer. And this is a nice paper which says that the accuracy of the IOL power determination can be improved if the flattest calculated K is used in the IOL determination, and myopia is targeted as a refractive outcome. And this is how they ask us to keep the myopic target refraction about 1.5 diopters for 12 or more cut RK. Usually the RKs are more than 8 only. People have used intraoperative aberrometry in this kind of cases, but not very reliable. Some other tips are do not do the dominant eye first and adjust in the eye accordingly and avoid toric and multifocal lenses. Again, the paper here says that the OCT formula and true K were comparable to yes. And refractive stability for 4 weeks. It is 4 weeks for at least whenever it's a 4 RK cut, and 2 to 3 months for 8 or more cuts. Let's come to the another big group, and that is keratoconus. There are 3 pillars in the management of keratoconus and cataract coexisting, and they are dependent on the age, the stage, and the stability. Let's see some examples. There is a young patient, 35 years, with a stable keratoconus. The topography is, of course, mandatory, and use an optical biometry. Use the 4th generation formulas for IOL calculations like Haigis, Shamas, Holaday, and the Barrett Universal 2. All results should be in 2 diopters of Haigis formula. This is a patient who is young, mild, and stable. But what if he has an unstable keratoconus? Well, in that case, you have to either wait for stability. You can stable the cornea again with a cross-linking, do a pinhole test. If vision improves, then do cross-linking plus intracorneal rings. If not improved, then again cross-linking. Middle-aged cataract with stable and mild to moderate case, well, corneal topography is of course must. Optical biometry, compare the K readings, use the Haigis, Shamas, Barrett Universal 2 and Hills formula. Toric eyes to be avoided. Middle-aged cataract with advanced stable keratoconus, this is again going to be a problem. You might have to include DALK also along with the phaco and IOL, and there are a lot of issues with the corneal thickness also in these patients. And again, this is going to be a big challenge, old age above 60 years with keratoconus, right? So this is another old age with keratoconus where we might have to consider a standard PKP, and then all the vagaries of keratoplasty also creep into the IOL power calculation. I'll try and skip this formulae. So for keratoconus IOL power calculations, preoperative considerations like mild to moderate, stable keratoconus, Barrett Universal 2, all corneal bypass formulas like Olsen, Haigis-L, and Oculis also do better because we're bypassing the cornea. Keep a myopic target recommended target for 48 to 53 diopters, at least half a diopter, and for above 59, a target of at least 2 to 2.5 diopters. Well, these are the extreme cases. IOL selection, I will not go into into those details. The location of incision, the size of incision, and the capsular staining are also important. So this is for post-keratoplasty. Thank you very much. I had to speed up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tejas, for wonderful talk regarding the how to manage the keratoconus and how to manage for the post-refractive cases. Now I invite Dr. Sahil Vasavada. Everybody knows him. He has a maximum work as far as India is concerned regarding the pediatric IOLs and the pediatric IOL power calculations. Over to you, sir, Dr. Sahil.
Thank you very much, Dr. Twinkle sir, for having me in this course, and wonderful presentation so far. Just to add on the wonderful presentation that Dr. Tejas Shah made, the Barrett's formula, the Barrett's True K now also has an option of selecting keratoconus. So they have come up with a new algorithm for keratoconus. So that should hopefully improve our outcomes in keratoconic eyes. Now, switching from adults to pediatric, pediatric cataracts have several challenges. At the outset, I acknowledge that we do receive research grant support from Alcon Laboratories, but has no relevance to this presentation. Accurate IOL power prediction is one of the major challenge, particularly in children, because these eyes are going to grow. And the concerns about calculating IOL power in children are threefold. First is, how do you measure them accurately? Because none of these fancy equipments that we've all learned, the SWEP, CT, etc., are applicable. Second is, what formulas do you use? And children behave very differently compared to adults. And how much do you target their refraction, keeping in mind the growing eye? The basis of keratometry, the biometric evaluation is the keratometry and the axial length measurements. And generally, children, pediatric patients, generally 3, 4, 5 years or less, will not allow you to do a biometry or a keratometry or a topography. So you need to do them under anesthesia. Handheld autokeratometers these days are fairly accurate. And if axial length by, of course, immersion as far as possible. Contact is done only in very, very small eyes, where in spite of using a pediatric Traeger shell, sometimes the eyes are so small that the probe doesn't fit. There are certain individuals who feel that if you do not get a good reading, you can use standard case. However, although this article has been published almost 15 years back, we would recommend to stay away from using standard values. And it's been shown quite comprehensively that contact scan, like in adults, is not as accurate even in pediatric compared to immersion, and therefore immersion should be preferred. Optical biometry, of course, is limited to older children more than 5, 6, 7 years of age who will sit on the optical biometer and allow good readings. Now, having taken the readings, how do you calculate and what formulas do you use? Do you use the Barrett's, the Olson, Haig's, artificial intelligence, etc.? So there has been several articles in literature, and all of them give different answers. And that's because pediatrics is still not as comprehensively solved, the challenge of pediatric eye growth, as compared to adults. And there have been, like I said, several publications recommending all kinds of formulas, all generations of formulas. We did our own study comparing the SRKT, Hoffer-Q, Holladay 1 and the Holladay 2. And what we found was the SRKT and the Holladay 2 had the least absolute prediction error. So our choice is the SRKT or the Holladay 2. Remember, the Barrett's and all of them are newer formulas, and they've not been evaluated so far in pediatric eyes. We are in the process of doing that, but as of now, there is no recommendation for any of the newer generation formulas. So this was the article that we published, where we found the SRKT and the Holladay 2 to be the most useful in our setup. And the third most important is, how much do you leave the child with the refractive error post-operatively? That is the target refraction. So the ocular growth varies on the age of the surgery and the laterality of the the cataract. So unilateral cataract will behave differently compared to a bilateral cataract. With age, there is a more myopic shift of the eye. When it starts with the newborn, it's more hypermetropic, and it becomes myopic over a period of time. And therefore, there is changing refraction over periods of months and years. The average axial length of a newborn is around 16.6 millimeters, and the growth varies in 3 different phases. The most rapid is the postnatal phase of up to 6 months. The slower infantile phase is up to 18 months, and the juvenile phase is 18 months onwards until late teenage. Several normative databases have been published regarding the age generalized axial lengths. However, cataract eyes is a diseased eye, and all of these normative databases are for normal eyes. So the rate of axial growth is higher in children who are operated less than 1 year of age. It's higher in pseudophakic eyes compared to aphakic eyes, and we found the similar results in our own aphakia versus pseudophakia randomized trial. It is higher in unilateral pseudophakia. So in a unilateral cataract, the eye with cataract and pseudophakia is likely to grow more than the normal eye. The only good point is that visual axis obscuration, or PCO, which always occurs in almost all children less than 1 year of age, if not managed appropriately intraoperatively, does not affect the rate of axial growth. So how do you target? What IOL power, what target refraction do you use? It depends. There are 2 schools of thoughts. The first school of thought is to make the child emetropic at the very beginning, so that there will be good visual stimulation going into the side center of the brain, and that will lead to less amblyopia. The major drawback here is that there is a very high likelihood of severe myopia and high grades of myopia occurring in the long run. The second more commonly followed strategy is to leave behind residual hypermetropia, or what is called as undercorrection, which has a potential for greater embryogenicity in the early postoperative period, with lesser chances of developing extremes of myopia in the future. The most commonly followed strategy, like I said, is to undercorrect. And there are several theories, there are several papers, and there are several stalwarts who use different ways of undercorrecting based on age and so on and so forth. So undercorrection depends on the age, the axial length, and laterality. So if it's a unilateral cataract, of course you undercorrect less because you don't want to create too much of an ametropia between the two eyes. Bilateral cataracts are relatively easier to target. So in the existing strategies, the first guidelines that were being used are the Dahan's guidelines, where children less than 2 years were classified based on the axial length, and just by measuring the axial length, you will choose the IOL power, not taking into consideration anything else, including keratometry. Plager and his colleagues suggested post-operative refractive goal according to age. So they started with slightly older children. So 3 years, you have a goal of +5 and keep reducing as the child keeps growing, the age keeps growing. Dr. Rupal Trivedi and Dr. Ed Wilson and their groups, according again to their age, but they started with much younger children of 1 or less than 1 year of age. And as you can see, younger the child, more the residual hypermetropia or undercorrection. And having gone through several of these articles, as well as studying our own data, we follow this we follow this kind of strategy rather than the amount. We deduct a percentage. So less than 3 months, we deduct 35% undercorrection, 3 to 6 months, 30%, 6 to 12 months, 25%. And as the age keeps increasing, lesser and lesser undercorrection. And anything beyond 6 or 7 years of age, we hardly undercorrect anything much. So for example, if a 9-month child was presented with cataract and his emetropic power was 32 diopters, as per our strategy, we would do a 25% reduction, which would mean deducting 8 diopters from 32 diopters, which would mean an IOL power implantation of 24 diopters. So I think to summarize pediatric IOL power calculation, like I said, the challenges lie in measurement. So frequent and good examination under anesthesia by a specially trained optometrist is important. Accurate measurements can be achieved by using handheld keratometers and smaller customized designed Prager shells for immersions. We find the SRKT and the Holiday 2 at the moment to be reasonably the most closest to what we are targeting, and always follow the strategy of undercorrection, whatever form of undercorrection you prefer, stronger or lesser, but always undercorrect, and younger the child, more the undercorrection. So with this, I would like to end my talk, and thank you very much for the opportunity and the patient listening.
Thank you, Dr. Sai. Thanks a lot. Now we go for our next talk. The next talk is regarding the understanding of the posterior corneal astigmatism and the newer toric calculator. So in our regulatory calculations, what we are getting from the optical biometry, all these variables from axial length, keratometry, anti-chamber depth, white to white, and lens thickness, and they have been incorporated according to your choice of formulae, and they gives us a spherical component. And from keratometry, we are getting the keratometry finding and put it into the toric calculator, and we are getting the which type of lens implant we have to put implant, the model of the implant, the amount of astigmatism correction, and the axis of the implantation. This we are doing since so many couple of decades, but there we are finding some inaccuracies in this. One of these inaccuracies is the surgical induced astigmatism. SIA we are calculating since so many period, so a long period. But now over the period of time, we are finding there are some technical problems with the SIA. Effect of the PCA was not understood before. Now we are having a better and better equipment. We are getting the clear understanding about the PCA and how it affects the cylindrical part of the toric calculator. The influence of effective lens position on the cylindrical power at the corneal plane. The IOL effective lens position has a significant effect on the cylindrical power at the corneal plane. We are now better understanding by the better tomography of the lenses, and the position of fovea and optic disc tilt. And lastly, newer coming up is the post-operative IOL tilt. And new few generation of IOL power calculations or toric calculators are also incorporating this post-operative IOL tilt. We had discussed about my previous talk about the Panacea, and they are considering the capsular tilt factor. So we'll go in a little bit detail about that part also. So first we go for the SIA part. SIA, we all know Dr. Warren Hill site where you have to put your all the data and you are getting the results of your SIA. But now what happens with this SIA part? The SIA has the different problems in the magnitude. Typically shows the wide variation in the magnitude. Means, suppose I am operating this patient with a 2.4 millimeter incision and I am getting a SIA of 0.32. And Dr. Sail is operating with the same 2.4 incision and he is getting the SIA of 0.27. So it's very wide variation in the magnitude part of the SIA. The orientation is also not consistent. All the surgeons are performing at the 180 degree, but they are not getting the same orientation on the postoperative results. The mean value is also cannot be applied as an individual, and the median value has a very less sensitivity because of the outliers. So now we are coming up with another thing that is a centered value. That is the most useful series of the cases. Now we are going in a little bit detail about the centered value. Why we need a centered value? Because of our better understanding about this vector system, and because we have a very good eye tracer system where we analyze the cornea, front surface, back surface, power and the magnitude of axis, everything can be very well calculated. So we come to know how the effect of the surgery is lasting on the cornea. And that's why what we were doing for the SIA calculation was the single angle plot. Now it has been shifted toward the double angle plot. And in the double angle plot, put all your data, and now you can apply the trigonometric vector analysis on that. And this will give you us results about the centered value. So the centered is the average of this all the vectors and represents the mean SIA value. So suppose your cornea clear cornea incision is 2.4. Your SIA, your centered value will be nearly 0.01. So you can calculate your own SIA by going this ASCRS website, and you can use the astigmatism double angle plot. Put your all the data what we were doing for the SIA calculation. The same way you can calculate your centered value. Another component is the posterior corneal astigmatism effect. Now, because in 2010, Dr. Douglas Koch and Lee Wang come with this paper that the standard trigonometric and topographic machines tend to yield inaccurate results in assessing the net corneal astigmatism. So they come out with a clear picture that there is a definite correlation between the anterior corneal astigmatism and the posterior corneal astigmatism. And they find out that there is a relationship between the front and back cornea, even with the rule and against the rule. When there is a with the rule astigmatism and the higher astigmatism on the front surface, they have a little bit same corresponding power on the back surface. The same way against the rule, the higher the ATR, they have not so much increase in the against the rule astigmatism effect on the back cornea. So what we find out is the effect of PCA is the most of the posterior cornea is steep vertically. Nearly 80% of the corneas are vertically steep. So the posterior cornea acts as a negative lens. So it creates the net plus power along horizontal plane 180 degree. So it creates the against the rule astigmatism. So patients who are with the rule astigmatism, the net effect will be decreasing the with the rule astigmatism. And for the against the rule astigmatism, net effect will be increasing the against the rule astigmatism. So now this has been incorporated by the Baylor in 2013, and they come with the nomogram. And suppose you are going for the toric calculations, and whatever the results you are getting from the calculator, you have to apply this nomogram according to the with the rule or against the rule astigmatism. And you either change your toric power T3 or T4. Either if the with the rule, you should decrease it, and against the rule, you should increase it. And this nomogram works very well for a couple of years. But over the period of time, we found out that this nomogram has also their own limitations because they are based on the population averages. And second is average power contribution is only there. But what about the meridian? It was not giving any idea about the meridian part. And meridian has its significant effect. Dr. Paul has again, Douglas Koch has again found out that there is a significant effect of the angular effect. Suppose your front cornea is the with the rule 3 diopter. at 70 degree. And when you apply the Baylor nomogram, it gives the exact correction power of the 2.3 at the front cornea. But suppose when we are measuring this cornea, it is 2.3 at 60 degree. So whatever the lacking is the meridional part consideration that was lacking in the Baylor nomogram. So ideally we should take the power and meridian both in the account, considering as a total corneal astigmatism part. And so over the period of time in 2017, Pereira came with this paper that the posterior astigmatism will change the net power of the corneal astigmatism, and also the axis has also changed. Nomograms are not addressing this issue, but when you are measuring the posterior corneal astigmatism, they have significant effect in decrease in the cylindrical correction. So how you can measure the PCA? We have already discussed that SSOCT by IOLMaster 700 gives the total corneal power. The same way Simflux images Pentacam give us a TRCP power. The same way intraoperative approximately ORI also gives us the PCA values. And the color LED SNE astigmatism display also gives the our PCA values. Now we have two things. We are able to measure the PCA, and second thing, we have so many nomograms who are estimating the PCA powers. So Baylor nomogram or Abulafett formulas, Goglin's coefficient adjustment, or so many toric calculators are also incorporating these algorithms by itself. Now we are confused whether we have to estimate or we have to measure the posterior corneal power. For that, this is another Ferreira again come with a very good study. He has compared the four important toric calculators: Barrett toric calculator, Abulafett toric calculator, Panacea, and PhacoOptics, which are ray tracing based. He comes to conclusion that the Barrett toric calculator and Abulafett has the lowest estimation prediction error. He also found out that the direct evaluation of total corneal power was not superior to the estimating it. So the estimation and the measurement both will be nearly same results. According to this study, he also found out there is a limitation in the measurement of the devices. IOLMaster 700 and the comparison with the other equipments. So IOLMaster 700 gives a definitely lower percentage of the vertical steep axis meridian. And also they have found out that the nomograms works very well for the cornea, which are the normal corneas, with the rule corneas, where the steepest, it always considered as the posterior cornea as a steep vertically. But there are outliers, and the outliers are not working very good with the nomograms. So they were very well, we are going for the consideration of the posterior corneal measurements. So this is another study which was also showing the same thing, that there is a difference between the two optical biometer. There is a difference between the two corneal power measurements by the two different machines. So there is not a strong correlation between the optical biometer of IOLMaster 700 and the Simflux device Pentacam. The PCA power is not the same. So advantage of the estimation works very well for the most eyes, but the outliers are working very bad. When you are going for the measurement, they are better for the outliers and unusualized oblique astigmatisms. But the problem is there is no gold standard technique who can compare the different machines. Now we go for the third. Another important part is the influence of effective lens position on cylindrical power at the corneal plane. The toric calculators are calculated either using a fixed ratio or by using the estimation effective lens position. Fixed ratio means the astigmatism correction at the corneal plane by the astigmatism of IOL. Suppose your corneal plane is astigmatism of 1.5, your cylindrical power corneal plane is 1.03, then you have to correct the IOL cylindrical power at 1.5. So it has been assumed by the fixed toricity ratio of the 1:1.45. But is there an effect of the effective lens position makes a difference for that? Yes, it is make a difference when there is an abnormal eye, not an average eye. So how it consider? Suppose you have a high hyperopic eye, then rather than considering the ratio of 1.45:1, you consider 1.2:1. And suppose you have a high myopia, the ratio will be changed to 1.75:1. So now all the recent toric calculators are incorporating this effective lens position system or the variable ratio with the different calculators. So this is the way the amount of the toricity ratio has to be incorporated in the toric calculators. Now toric calculator has two parts of the upgradation. One is those machines who are considering the effective lens position ratio, ELP variability along with their toric calculations. Now, why this is important is because suppose you are operating a patient on the Hoya or Motionlong platform, and you are using those calculators who have a fixed ratio, and patient has a very high myopia or very high hyperopia, there are chances of error are still there. So at that time, rather than using their own fixed ratio calculator, you should shift towards the other available online calculators. The same way, so many other addition of this posterior measurement is also incorporated by so many toric calculators like the Alcon toric calculator or AMO, Barrett toric calculator, and Medicounter or Visual toric calculator. So which calculator one should use? A calculator which has a PCA automatically added as a third vector. A calculator which has a variable effective lens position used as a toricity when the refinement in the toricity required. A calculator you didn't require additional biometry spherical component. It calculates its own spherical power by using the advanced formula, and it uses the centered value to represent the surgical estimation. At present, the Barrett is the only one which are fulfilling all these four criteria. The Alcon and AMO toric calculators are also very good. But the only problem is that you have to import the spherical IOL power from your calculations. So this is the Alcon toric calculator. This one is the Barrett toric calculator. Now the next which is coming up is the position of fovea and optic disc still under evaluation, but there are some findings are that the optic disc orientation in some extent may indicate the steeper meridian of the cornea. This another study shows that the degree of mid-parole astigmatism was considered when interpreting the optic nerve head parameter and peripapillary retinal fiber thickness by the Sira Society. But this is going to be coming up in the near future. The last and now widely talked about is the postoperative IOL tilt. Because of the better understanding and better machines of the newer OCT machines, which are giving us a lens topography. So anterior surface of the lens, posterior surface of the lens, and everything has been calculated, measured by this newer tool. They give us another terminology that is an equatorial plane position of the lens. And this equatorial plane position has also a significant equation with the effective lens position. So over the period of time, we find out there is a definitive postoperative IOL tilt factor, and this factor can be now has been found out by the newer optical biometry of IOLMaster 700 by Dr. Lee Wang and the Dr. Douglas Koch, that they have found out that there is a significant mirror symmetry between the right eye and left eye crystallized lens tilt and the IOL tilt both. There was a strong correlation in the tilt magnitude and direction between the postoperative crystalline lens and the postoperative IOL tilt. The amount of tilt with the crystalline was the same magnitude or nearly same direction for the IOL tilt. And another important thing is whenever you have an increase or decrease in the axis length, this tilt magnitude was significantly affecting the results. So in summary, instead of SIA value using the center value, use the 2.4 incision 0.1 or 0.12 in 2.8 incisions. At present scenario, total corneal power estimation and the measurement results are nearly equivocal. Use the toric calculator, incorporate the center, which is incorporating the center value, PC estimation, variability to toricity ratio, and which has an inbuilt spherical IOL power calculation. And last list is the upcoming toric calculators, which are TCP measurement values, total corneal power measurement values, and in future calculating the lens tilt factor. Thanks for your attention. I'm very much thankful to all the participants and all the panelists who have spared their valuable time for this. Dr. Tejas, are there any questions?
No, I don't think there are no questions on the chat box.
Dr. Samruddhi, do you find?
No, we don't have any questions in the Q&A, but looking at the time, if there is any discussion, we still have another 5 minutes for it.
Dr. KK sir is here. Sir, any inputs from your side?
You're muted, Dr. Keki.
Unmuted now. Sorry. Now you can hear me. No, you did a beautiful talk and nothing more to add to it. Really nice.
Thank you, sir. If there are no questions, we can end the session. Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot. Thanks, AIOS Scientific Committee Chairman and committee to give an opportunity for us. Thank you.
Thanks,
Difficult.
Twinkle, for
Yeah,
that wonderful
difficult.
talk.
Yeah.
Great.
Over to
Thank
next
you.
session.
Thank you, doctors. That was a wonderful session. Sorry we had to rush through some parts of it since we were running short on time.